getting the presidential assent. We are joined by someone who's very intimately connected with the GST bill and its final passage. Arvind Subramanian, the Chief Economic Advisor, is joining us on the phone line. Dr. Subramanian, thank you very much for joining us. Well, this is clearly landmark. Now, do you think the passage will get a little smoother in the GST Council?
Well, as you know, we have a series of kind of landmarks to pass in order to implement it by April 1. And the first one was the ratification by the states and then the presidential assent. So that first kind of marker, we seem to be on track. And so now things will, the GST Council will be set up, and lots of decisions will have to be taken then. And hopefully by the monsoon session, in the winter session, we'll have the pieces of legislation which will then need to be approved. So far we're on track, but a lot of work lies ahead.
Okay. Well, Dr. Subramanian, would you say that at this halfway mark, does it look like the second half is tougher because it is here that the actual numbers will come in terms of the tax rate?
Well, they're all, I mean, it's very difficult to grade these things in terms of which is more tough or less tough. After all, the constitutional amendment bill seemed very tough, a few months ago. Yes, so it's all a matter of how much, the atmosphere, how much, sense of cooperation there is going to be. And I think, those levels of trust and cooperation have been rising steadily. But lots of difficult decisions to be taken, in the GST Council. Once we can clear that, I think then we can be on our way to an April 1 implementation deadline.
Sir, your sense on the Constitution, the setting up and the working of the GST Council itself, because I guess that's where the crux of this landmark tax legislation really lies. What we were given to understand was that states had been lobbying for a far higher standard rate than what the panel that was chaired by you had suggested. So what is your sense on how this GST Council will be able to function and come to some kind of consensus on these critical issues?
As I said, these are, very technical and detailed discussions. I think people have gone back and, looked at the numbers more carefully. And, in the council, we will have, a fresh pairs of eyes looking at all these numbers. And, the council will come up with both a rate and the whole structure of rates, actually, not just one rate, how many rates, which products are going to be exempted, all that. So it's not just one number, but a series of numbers that have to be agreed upon. And I think, let's wait to see how that evolves. We know that all things considered, a lower rate is better than a higher rate. But, you're juggling and trying to reconcile multiple objectives here. So let's see how it works out.
Okay, Dr. Subramanian, even assuming that the GST Council is able to hammer out a rate by April 1, are we otherwise technologically ready?
Yeah, I think, these preparations have been ongoing for a long time. And, at every stage we have to test it. We have to see how prepared we are. But, my sense so far is that lots of work has been going on. And, hopefully we should be ready from a technical perspective to be able to meet the April 1 deadline. But, again, these are pretty stiff deadlines. But, government is committed to achieving it.
Sir, what, in your opinion, is a better way to approach this? Because the central concept is to ensure revenue neutrality as we move into the GST regime. So is it better perhaps to start with higher rates, because that's what the states are lobbying for, to start with a higher rate to ensure that there is no leakage of revenue? Or is it actually better to start with a lower rate so that, you introduce GST without really disrupting the consumption and growth cycle as well?
Yeah, I think my preference, and that's what we said in the report as well, that on balance, all things being equal, it's better to err, if anything, slightly on the side of lower rates, because, that helps compliance. Because you see, the higher the rate, compliance. So why burden a very difficult policy reform with the burden of having to, cope with high rates, which complicates compliance, which creates fears about inflation? That's why, on balance, I think we should err on the side of lower rates.
Dr. Subramanian,
And then you find, if you discover that you're falling short on revenue, I think there are other ways of coping with it.
Yeah, exactly. The Parliament or the central government is committed to anyway completely compensating the state. So that logically should not be a problem. Well, that's a convincing argument for sure. But Dr. Subramanian, the government is also now trying to advance the budget date so that ministries can spend their money. That puts the budget in a kind of a strange light. A lot of the taxes are already taken out and put into the GST Council now. So would the budget be a more routine exercises going forward?
No, I don't think there's any real connection between advancing the budget.
But you can't
cycle
change a lot of taxes, isn't it, now? That was my question.
No, that would be true whether you have a January budget or a February budget.
Yes.
I mean, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
So now we are in a new regime of tax setting on indirect taxes, and it's a daring, bold experiment, as I've said, in governance, in federalism in India. We have to see how it's going to work out over time.
Okay, maybe I should have rephrased the question this way. Does it now become that the GST Council's outcome become more important than budgets? Budgets would become, lackluster and routine. As well, the GST Council becomes more important than Parliament.
No. I mean, see, remember that first, we're only talking about some indirect taxes.
Yes.
All your income taxes are still, business as usual. All those taxes that are not in GST, also business as usual. That's point one. Point two is that whatever the GST Council decides will have to be, passed by Parliament. So Parliament doesn't, lose any. Doesn't get defanged in any way. Yeah?
Yeah.
Great.
Point taken. Dr. Subramanian, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sorry. He seemed in a hurry, and that's why. But my point is that, the point is taken that direct taxes still are with Parliament, and so budgets and parliaments will always remain important. But the rise of the GST Council actually puts the Rajya Sabha in a serious threat. If the big decision on money is going to be decided by the GST Council, the Rajya Sabha, which anyway did not have powers over money bills, and therefore will be pointless going to it for direct taxes, kind of pales in comparison to the GST Council as a council of states. As a council of states, the prime body will be the GST Council, not necessarily the Rajya Sabha, except in non-money matters, which anyway doesn't matter.
I guess the big question now, Lata, I mean, 18% is the rate that's been recommended by Mr. Subramanian. We were just talking to him, whether the GST Council is going to buy that rate or not, or whether they'll agree on something else. I guess that's where the real crux of this legislation will lie. But anyway, let's take a quick